here at the Salt Lake City Regional Championships.
We really didn't mess around when it came to getting back into the game. 2 players already sitting at 2-0, a face that many of you may recognize if you've been following the video game championship for a little while. Of course, Wolfe Glick, former world champion, a whole host of other achievements in there as well. Always brings something a little bit interesting, I think it's fair to say, for his team building. But he's going to be going up against Chase Timmreck. And, you know, if you can take your 2-0 start, take down a former world champion and push on from there, that's a huge boost of confidence going into the rest of the day.
Well, especially when the series and how the meta of the video game championships have evolved over the past few years, safe to say that a lot has changed, right, Adam?
There has been a lot of changes. There's some Pokemon on here in these teams that the last time we were in person weren't even available at that point. So we'll dive into that a little bit later. For now, we'll take a brief overview of the team. We'll start with Wolfe's team. I think there's a lot going on here. There's a lot to unpack between his restricted pair, this Ultra Beast that we haven't seen in a little while, and then this very established core of kind of Trick Room users and setters and, you know, being able to capitalize off that.
Yeah, absolutely. And then on the other side of things, Chase, a very accomplished player as well, is going to be rocking a restricted that we've seen a lot of in the meta. Yveltal definitely coming into the fold a lot more, is one of those, you know, oppressive dark type users, gets a chance to do boosted damage with that dark aura ability. And then you also, of course, have the Zacian. And it's really weird looking at Wolfie's team, who the Zacian's not there when it feels like it's ever present on every team in Series 12 right now.
He's definitely, I think, in the minority of players in when the team selection, they didn't just start the team sheet with Zacian. It's very good, and we'll talk about it all day. We'll talk about it. Gabby and Joe will talk about it. We've got to acknowledge how good it is, but it's nice to see somebody mix it up. But I have heard about this Ice Rider Calyrex and Palkia pairing being kind of the preferred for the people who want to move away from the Zacian and feel they can control it. The Yveltal definitely getting its time to shine now. How many years did we deal with Xerneas at the top from that pairing? So it's nice to see a bit of a mix-up and Yveltal get its turn. There's some other interesting things in there. Of course, the traditional double genie, you guys might remember from the bottom of that. That one's still in full force. It's been a few years of double genie, but it still works and can cause a number of problems for certain players. So we're heading right into game very, very shortly. You can see both players done with their team selection. This is a big one.
Oh yeah, let's go ahead and take a look at what the leads are for both of these players. We've got Chase that will be bringing out that Rillaboom and that Zacian to kick things off, and Wolfie with the Amoonguss and the Palkia.
Yep, Amoonguss and Palkia. Certainly an interesting duo, mainly because of the Palkia. I know what Amoonguss does. I've seen it for a long, long time. But when you get down to the Palkia, it's one of those Pokemon that causes a lot of concerns for people because it has 2 options. It can just start going, you know, it's pretty fast. I'm not saying it's the fastest thing, but it can do that. But whenever you look at a Palkia, you've got to ask yourself, is this going to Trick Room? And if it Trick Rooms, the whole game can be turned on its head. Looking at Wolf's team, he probably leans on the Trick Room a little bit heavier, and it's up to Chase to really try and slow that down. Of course, he has options to do that on his side of the field right now, but they're kind of obvious, kind of telegraphed, and I'm curious as to how Wolfe is going to respond to that.
Yeah, looks like Wolfie's response is just, let's go ahead and get the Palkia out of there, maybe use it as a bit of bait, as it's now the Indeedee that enters into the field. And the most important thing about this is that Indeedee is changing the terrain in case Chase had decided to go for something like a priority Grassy Glide. At least that priority is going to be gone now from that Rillaboom side. But no, what's this? Chase is going to go ahead and use that Dynamax factor. It is time to get that rolling. And it looks like what we've got here is Gigantamax Rillaboom now on the field.
Rillaboom's not messing about, and that's clearly going to be a focal point for Chase if he's so confident to Gigantamax it already. The Zacian just being there to do its normal thing. We'll see how he plays into this turn. There's the signature move right off the bat to open up our stream. Behemoth Blade into the Amoonguss, maybe predicting a Rage Powder there, but just look how much damage that does.
Yeah, or just recognizing maybe that's what was going to end up coming out here, but we will see a huge chunk of damage onto the Indeedee. It just barely hangs on, as Amoonguss now, the slowest to move on the field, will be able to put that Zacian to sleep.
That's probably exactly what Wolfe wants there as well. Being able to bring the Indeedee and keep the Palkia safe, really, really important. It would have been a neutral hit, but the Indeedee is probably more worthwhile taking the damage on than the Palkia. The Amoonguss, knowing it can take the Behemoth Blade, it's still a lot of damage, you know, it's nearly 75%, give or take a couple of points, but it got the Zacian to sleep. That's guaranteed to sleep next turn. So if Wolfe is trying to play around with something like the Trick Room, maybe switch some things back in, then he's going to be in a position to do that. Here's one of those switches right away.
Yeah, let's go with the Ice Rider Calyrex now. As Among Us has done its job, and with that regenerator ability as well, we'll be able to preserve some of that HP moving into future turns. But Ndidi goes for the follow me. Really, really lucky hold on here so that Ndidi can actually draw away some of the attention. But G-Max drum solo gonna go ahead and deal the last bit of damage to that Ndidi. And Ice Rider Calyrex now is here to stay.
Yep, this board is kind of setting up, and I think giving up the Ndidi there is absolutely fine. Manages to kind of just get it in and let it do a little bit of its work. And really importantly, I really harp on this a lot, which I know gets boring for some, but you've only got 3 turns when you Dynamax or Gigantamax. You've got to use those turns valuably, and using a G-Max drum solo, one of your turns of Dynamax, or in this case Gigantamax, just to do that final bit of damage seems so wasteful to me. It's always a little bit hard to bounce back from. So this is Rillaboom's last turn in the Gigantamax form. Obviously needs to do something really impactful here. The Zacian still might not wake up. Could do this turn, but last turn it was guaranteed out. So really still leaning on this Rillaboom, and I just don't think it's being given the room to do the damage it needs to do in its final turn. The Calyrex also just threatening it purely from the type-specific matchup.
We're going to go ahead and see the Rage Powder come out here from the Amoonguss to hopefully draw away at least the attention of the Zacian here, as it does wake up and is able to get another Behemoth Blade out. And this should finish it off based on the damage that we saw last turn, and it will indeed. So Amoonguss at least going to be able to hopefully allow this Calyrex to set up, but this Rillaboom still going to be able to get off its third and final G-Max drum solo. But what's this? Calyrex used Trick Room.
Yeah, the Calyrex there, one of the many options on Wolfe's team that can set Trick Room. I mean, most people bring, I believe, 2 is probably the standard. I think we just agreed on as a community. But this has gone for 3 Pokemon that can carry it. We don't know if they all carry it yet, and Chase doesn't know that either. But this is now Wolfe's time to shine. He's played this very slow and steady early game where he just wants to kind of maneuver the board just to what he wants, but now he's got to capitalize. He is, of course, down in the Pokemon count. This is still Chase's lead, and he's still not taken any damage. So I think this turn, Wolfe needs to get the momentum going again, or else he could be in a little bit of trouble. But this board is the way to do it. He's got both his restricted on the field at once. The Zacian being awake is a little bit annoying. It is going to leave, which may be exactly what Wolfe wants, but I'm really focusing on the Ice Rider Calyrex.
I am as well. Rillaboom just going for a Protect here. I think that's very smart, especially if that Ice Rider Calyrex was going to go for something like this Glacial Lance, then that Rillaboom is going to be protected from that. But the Blastoise is not, as it is a double target move. So that Blastoise that just got switched in will be taking a fair chunk of damage, even though it's not very effective. But Palkia also going for the Earth Power, reading into that Protect and just absolutely trying to get rid of the Zacian that was just there.
Yep, this is the perfect pairing, really, to deal with that. You've got the Glacial Lance, which deals with the Rillaboom and will do a little bit of extra damage over to the Zacian. Then you've got the Palkia to come in and clean up with the Earth Power. Palkia is actually one of my favorite restricted to use in this format, just because of its move pool. It has so much available, and I think the best trainers who have bought it this weekend are going to be the people establishing the threats that they're going to see every game and bringing the moves to counter that. In this case, you're going to see Zacian, you're going to need Earth Power. It's that simple, and just Wolfe being able to capitalize off that, really nicely done. This Blastoise, though, coming in pretty well, all things considered, just taking a little bit of damage.
Another Glacial Lance, though, coming out from this Ice Rider Calyrex. That Trick Room proving very, very useful here to allow that Calyrex to move. Blastoise, though, is going to get knocked out here, and a critical hit onto the opposing Zacian as well. It's a lot more damage, I think, that Chase was expecting.
It's a whole lot of damage to go down, and that Blastoise getting knocked out just means that this Earth Power, no matter where Wolfe was targeting it, is going to hit that Zacian, and this is that momentum swing I was talking about. Just every turn he's putting down the pressure. You know, Chase hasn't fired back in the last 2 turns now, so he's now back to a 2-2 Pokemon count. We know it's the Rillaboom, which can't deal with this Calyrex right now. There's 2 more turns of Trick Room that he has to try and get through. This Calyrex is absolutely fine right now, and this Palkia should just be able to clean up whatever is left. We are going to see the other restricted in Evil Tile, and I'm not so sure that that's going to be in a great position right now.
No, honestly, both of these Pokemon don't really want to be under Trick Room conditions versus an Ice Rider Calyrex. That's definitely not a place that you would want to find yourself if you were a flying or a grass type Pokemon. But also, Wolfe still has Dynamax.
Wolfe hasn't Dynamaxed anything yet, and that really could just lock up the game for him. Chase went really hard with it early, just saying, you know what, okay, we're going to really push with this Rillaboom, and that's not got it. Just as you say it, though, we do get to see Wolfe's choice of the Dynamax, just making sure that this game gets wrapped up a little bit quicker, I'd imagine. And there it is, the Palkia. Unsurprising, I'd say, in this instance. It's just the healthier choice, so it's going to be really hard to take down and should be able to power through in the last couple turns of Trick Room. Also, just avoiding any protects.
Yeah, avoiding protects, and also the fact that Calyrex would lose its ability to have spread damage. And so that's something that I think you really do value here. But we will see a protect coming out from the Calyrex and a max Whirlwind from the Palkia. And that's such a great choice to have in front of that Rillaboom, but it doesn't even matter. The Rillaboom just gets knocked out.
I love that term from Wolfe. It's so tidy. You know the Rillaboom's just come back in. Rillaboom has fake out. It's been like that for a long time. You think, well, he's scared of the Calyrex. Let me just protect it this turn, and then let me just go after that Rillaboom. You know, the Rillaboom had a couple options there to try and attack outside of the normal Trick Room priority that we're looking at. Went for the fake out, but Calyrex avoided it wonderfully, and the Palkia's still exceptionally healthy. This one should be wrapped up in the final turn of Trick Room. So all of that investment early doors from Wolfe to try and set that up, to try and be ready to play the end game, if you will, with both his restricted, looks to be working out so well. And there it is, locking in the forfeit, committing that loss down for Chase. Got to go back to the drawing board when it comes to game number 2.
That game one it's particularly deceptive when you take a look at the board position, right? You take a look at what Chase is leading, and you just automatically look and say there's a lot of momentum there, and especially in a meta and like Series 12 where momentum means everything, it can mean a lot to be on the back foot in the first 2 turns.
Well, while Wolfe was down, let's say the Pokemon count, you know, he was losing some Pokemon. He lost that in DD early. He was taking a lot of damage on the Amoonguss as well. While he was down on paper, I don't think at any point he was losing the game. I think he was always knowing exactly what his path was to the Trick Room. And as soon as that Trick Room set up, there was just a very clear path to be able to say, you know what, I've got my restricted pair. They both function well in Trick Room, particularly against Chase's team, which really do struggle a little bit. There's a lot of quick Pokemon on there and not many answers to Trick Room.
Yeah.
It's not like some of these teams we've seen before where some people, let's say they build in a Trick Room counter. I feel that might be missing from this team a little bit, and that got called out. As soon as that Trick Room went up, the game only went one way, and that was Wolfe's direction. So he's up in this set. Of course, it's best of 3 though, and if Chase has something, he can go back to the drawing board and try and figure it out.
Yeah, there's still so many different options on even both of these teams. So I'm really excited to see the adjustments that are made for this game number 2. And if we're going to even see any of those genies come out from Chase's team, if they feel like they're good against the other modes that Wolfe's team has to offer.
I think I'd like to see the Evil Town a little bit earlier. Just looking down at this team on paper, just mulling over, you know, what caused the problem there? The Indeedee, the Amoonguss, you know, if he switches it up to the Dusclops, that Evil Town's in a good position to try and deal with that. So maybe saving that for the back, a little bit overly cautious from Chase. Bring that into the front, see if you can shut down or get knockouts. Of course, you do have to watch out for things like the Rage Powder. You don't want to get put to sleep. But it just feels like it has a better matchup than this, what I would say is a very neutral matchup. That Zacian and Rillaboom just kind of bought. It just kind of said, you know what, I'm very okay with whatever you throw at me, but it wasn't enough. I think you need a winning matchup here, or else Wolfe's going to set up on you, he's going to land the Trick Room, and then you're going to be in the exact same position as game number 1.
Yeah, that is a very, very good point. And I feel like when we were taking a look at that game number 1, the reason why I brought up, okay, well, this is deceptive, right? You look at Chase having all of those offensive options and Wolfe requiring that setup in order to actually really get the game plan rolling. It's tough to do that sometimes in a series that is so aggressive and so quick, but patience can be rewarded.
Yeah, I think the issue, the way that game worked is Chase was winning until he lost, right? He got through that first bit, he was putting down damage, we're like, okay, but it just wasn't enough to really push him forward when it got to the end game. You know, he was always in it, I think, but adjustments are needed when we go into game 2 and potentially game 3, because it got a little lopsided towards the end. You know, the fact that Wolfe had his Dynamax just to wrap the game up, really important. And like you say, patience. He knows the game plan. He's a top player. Doesn't need to throw out that Dynamax early. Doesn't need to throw down the Trick Room turn 1. Even though he had the option to. Don't get, like, the Palkia is a Trick Roomer, was on the board, doesn't throw it down, just takes his time, sets it up with the, you know, Ice Rider when it came in. The third potential Pokemon we saw with Trick Room went for the Ice Rider Trick Room. And that's just how controlled that game was.
Yeah, that team is scary on paper.
We said it before we even saw his team. He's going to build something interesting. I think Palkia Ice Rider on paper is very stable and established, but the variety and the way he plays it is what is the difference maker. I want to see Pheromosa. I know what the Pheromosa can do, and I'd be interested to see him completely flip the script and just run it that way. But I'm not going to get too much into it. I've done it before where I get really excited about a play, and I just don't see it.
We're going to see a lot of exciting play, though, this weekend, that's for sure. So even if it's not that particular play, then who knows what other teams, other spice we might be able to feature on this stream. I'm just excited that we get a chance to look at Series 12 in person and just really see how competitors are evolving their strategies in order to really play their strengths in this meta.
Well, don't forget, the last time we were in person, some of the Pokemon we saw weren't even available for play.
Yeah.
You know, we didn't have Isle of Armor, we didn't have Crown Tundra, so we didn't have the Calyrex Ice Rider. That just wasn't a thing. So it's nice to see, obviously we've seen them during the Players' Cups, really cool to see an evolution, even while we were away from live events, but being able to see those in what is really a defining tournament. You know, there's a lot of big names here. A lot of people want to claim that. It's really cool to see, and I'm excited to see. I mean, there's so much we've gone through. Last time we played, Intimidate Incineroar wasn't even.
No.
So anyway, the players are back before I go on a
ago.
tangent.
Yeah, getting ready to go into game number 2 between Wolfe, Glick, and Chase Timmreck. Wolfe with a 1-0 advantage right now in this best of 3, but I definitely feel like there are some adjustments that could be made here, especially when taking a look at Chase's team. There are many options that you can rely upon for damage outside of that Rillaboom.
There's a lot, and I want to see more of that coming through. I want more of his team to pull their weight, because it really was the Rillaboom show, and then it was lacking a little bit from there. So we're going to move on into game 2 very shortly. Very shortly, we'll get the leads up as well and see what adaptations have been made.
All right, well, I can see the leads right now, as you will. It is the Rillaboom and the Blastoise for Chase, and the Palkia and the Indeedee coming in for Wolfe.
That Indeedee is going to cause a lot of problems just by controlling the terrain
Yeah.
with Psychic Surge. There's a number of options over on this side where, you know, you really want to be able to maybe fake something out and stop things going on. But even since we got back to Tapu Lele many years ago, Fake Out has sort of waned as this guaranteed turn 1 setup or turn 1 delay. Just because if you run into a team with Psychic Surge and the immediate Psychic Terrain, you can be in a lot of trouble. So Psychic Terrain did take effect over the grassy terrain. Probably a smart bit of team building there from Wolfe, just to make sure that even the Rillabooms aren't going to be able to control the terrain. And that kind of nicely forces out the Rillaboom. This could be exactly what Wolfe wants. There's the Evil Tile, though, which I did want to see.
Yeah, so loss of terrain might mean actually a good advantage to be taken here, as Chase does get that swap, and Yawn coming in for the Blastoise. So that is a very interesting play here, as we do see the Expanding Force also come through from the Indeedee, and Palkia going for the Trick Room.
Confirmation there for Chase that the Palkia also has Trick Room. You've got to imagine that it's all over this team because it is so essential. And that very slow and steady turn there, Blastoise wasn't able to stop the Palkia on its own. The best you could do with Yawn isn't enough to slow down the Trick Room at the end of that turn. I mean, if the Palkia was trying to Trick Room down the line, maybe. But now that's all set up. Of course, the Palkia, once it's yawned, you know that you're going to sleep at the end of the turn, so you can just switch that out and see if you can really bring in something to capitalize on it. The Evil Tile's going to struggle. It's one of the quicker Pokemon in the format. You know, it's really usually built for speed, and I just don't know if it's going to be able to get the work done here. Yes, it's nice it doesn't get caught by the Expanding Force, but you've got to be able to really capitalize and lay down the damage. Now the Trick Room set up, another one of those restricted Pokemon that love Trick Room is coming in.
Yeah, Ice Rider Calyrex is now here in place of that Palkia, so it does not get put to sleep. But Indeedee is going to use the Follow Me. Really important to make sure that that Ice Rider Calyrex takes as little damage as possible, as Blastoise goes for a huge Hydro Cannon here into the Indeedee. But we will also see the Dark Pulse, and that's something that Indeedee is definitely going to like taking a little bit less. So Indeedee does fail.
Indeedee knocked out there, but it did its job. It bought enough time, not just for the Calyrex switch in there, the Ice Rider being very, very comfortable in the Trick Room. Here comes Palkia again, and we're really, this is very similar to game one. The board state is just way earlier in the game for Wolfe. He's in a position where both his restricted are on the board, full health in Trick Room. This is very, very scary if you're Chase, and looking over at that side of the field, what is the immediate answer? You know, you don't have an obvious candidate to try and stop it. You've got 3 more turns of Trick Room to navigate through, and a lot of players try and capitalize on Trick Room immediately. Wolfe being very smart here, just realizing, it's only 1 turn, let me use it to get my board position down. I think the Indeedee wanted to feint in that turn just to allow this restricted pairing on the field together.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's been a theme throughout game 1 and game 2 so far, is that Wolfe has found himself in this position where he does get this free switch into something that is very, very opportunistic for his game plan. And even now with the Trick Room active, both restricted on the field, Wolfe is seizing another opportunity here to go ahead and use the Dynamax to Dynamax that Ice Rider Calyrex.
A nice bit of variety there. I wasn't sure which one it was going to be, but with 3 more turns of Trick Room remaining, it makes sense just numerically to Dynamax one of them on this turn. The Ice Rider Calyrex getting the benefit, but Chase responding, of course, with a Dynamax of his own, being able to maybe try and get something a little bit bulkier, to take some of those hits, and just do it. And it's the Evoltal, which makes a lot of sense.
Perfect choice.
Because that's going to get focused down, I think, and will benefit from the double aim right there that you can see in the bottom right corner of your screen.
Yeah, with that double in HP, that is definitely going to help here. But a Max Quake coming out from the Ice Rider Calyrex into the Blastoise. So we will be able to see a knockout there before we get to see what this Blastoise can do next. And we also get these special defense boosts.
Well, the Evoltal revealed Dark Pulse last turn. I know there's obviously been some discussions on how you build the Evoltal. I know some players do it a little bit differently. But as soon as you reveal that, you may as well just grab a special defense boost. You get the knockout anyway, you get the boost. That's absolutely fantastic news for them. But in retaliation, the Max Darkness does land. Both these Dynamax Pokemon taking not so much damage, but the special defense immediately countered back out. So I kind of like that, but you still have the boost to take the hit. So it makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And then especially with the knockout as well onto the Blastoise, and this Ice Rider Calyrex is very much set up to continue to deal a significant amount of damage here. But Terrain back in Chase's control now as Rillaboom does enter the field and create that grassy terrain.
This Rillaboom, I think the slot right there was always going to be a tough switch for Chase. Just looking at the Pokemon he's bought and the Pokemon knocked out, you know, we've got to assume it's the Zacian in the back. We've just seen Earth Power from the Ice Rider Calyrex. All right, don't want to switch that into another Earth Power. Or you bring the Rillaboom, which is weak to Ice. It's not an easy choice to chase, and I think putting up the Rillaboom, probably the best choice. See if the Rillaboom can buy you a little bit of time in the back end of this Trick Room, and then you'll be able to maybe swing something at the end, but you've got to slow down the next 2 turns, because Wolfe could just run away with it, and it's going to be really difficult to slow down that Calyrex.
Yeah, with Terrain out of the way now, Fake Out is going to be very useful onto that Palkia as we see a Max Hailstorm now come out from the Ice Rider Calyrex. It's going to be enough to knock out the Yveltal. It is! And so that Dynamax is no longer in play, and we also have Hail on the field.
There's no way to slow down the Ice Rider Calyrex. You don't have the ability to Fake Out when, of course, it's in the Dynamax form. So the Rillaboom made a smart decision. You know, went after the Palkia, slowed it down for a turn, but there's Chilling Neigh, the second of the As-One abilities, now makes that Calyrex really even more dangerous going into the last turn, of course, of this Trick Room. You know, Rillaboom struggling a little bit here, might just have to try and buy itself a turn, but once we get confirmation of what the last Pokemon is, that could be sort of a very clear path to victory for Wolfe. Zacian confirmed.
Zacian was a great choice here as well, because had Chase been able to stick out the Trick Room, that Zacian is incredibly fast. It's going to be able to deal massive chunks of damage. And of course, it's still not over. There is still one more turn of Trick Room, one more turn of Dynamax for Wolfe here. And it makes a lot of sense here to see Chase go for these protects right now in order to try to get rid of the Trick Room and get rid of that advantage that Wolfe now has. So we will see the double protect.
Yeah, the double protect has to be the only way out. Of course, you are going to take some damage through the protect from the max moves. Nothing from the Palkia, though, so that's taking away the tempo from the Zacian. Oh my goodness, that is a lot. Of course, the chilling Nay helping out there, but this Zacian's going to struggle to take more hits, especially if it's not protecting, and you give over the special defense boost.
Yeah, the special defense boost, not going to be too problematic here for Chase to have to deal with, but it's all about that damage onto that Zacian right now, right? That's way more than you would want to have to take onto your Zacian. But let's see how much this Behemoth Blade out of this Dynamax and Trick Room mode can really do for Chase here.
That's another tough situation for Chase. You know, you want the Zacian to hit the Dynamax Pokemon. That's the core, you know, I mean, obviously it does a lot of damage, but the other big factor with Behemoth Blade is it hits Dynamax Pokemon for extra damage, so not being able to get that off is really important. And now there's another sticky situation. Chase, of course, has a speed advantage in his turn. Nobody's taking that away, but can he stop another Trick Room going out? There's now 2 potential Trick Room setters on the field. And if another Trick Room goes up, it could just be a problem. Palkia with a very good typing. The Zacian not hitting, and I don't think Rillaboom has a way to deal with this Palkia too well. Woodhammer might be the way.
Oh, a huge knockout there for Chase onto Wolfe's Palkia. And that was really, really well done there. Chase had to secure that, because if Palkia had gotten a Trick Room up, or, you know, that was called differently, I do appreciate that spread of damage so that you're more than likely knocking out one target.
Being able to have access to the Woodhammer, really big there for Chase, and kind of calls that turn perfectly. You don't worry about the Behemoth Blade going into the Protect. All you needed to do was knock out the Palkia, because it does make sense that that would be the Trick Room setter, right? That's the one that, you know, really is a little bit obvious. Here's the Pheromosa to wrap it up. And we were talking about another Trick Room. For those of you who haven't been around for a few years ago, Pheromosa also has an interesting form of speed control. And I wonder if Wolfe is going to show it right here in Game 2, because he could show it and potentially just wrap up the game completely off of the bat. So, of course, it does have aggressive attacking options itself. It's super frail and easy to get knocked out. So maybe its last-ditch attempt is just control the speed. I won't name the move if we don't see it. I don't want to get everyone too excited for it back at home. But this could be a really interesting way to close out the game.
Yeah, it's all about decisions, though, here. And you can see that the very first thing is going to be that priority Grassy Glide there into the Calyrex. But the speed swap from the Pheromosa onto the Ice Spider Calyrex. Calyrex is going to go ahead and just use Glacial Lance right away with that +2 boost that it has from the Chilling Nay. And let's go ahead and see how much damage this is able to do. It's a double knockout here, and Wolfe Glick takes round number 3 of the Salt Lake City Regional Championships.
Why was I worried about a potential Trick Room? He knew. And that's why I was a little bit concerned in the previous turn. What happens if Palkia goes down? The Calyrex isn't going to be able to